This is KQWL 1620 AM, Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network, Tillamook County Perimeter, the Perimeter Broadcast. If you are hearing this transmission, emergency conditions are ongoing. At 3:47 this morning, every phone in this county received the same text message. The message has no sender. It has not been possible to delete. For regional carriers have now stopped calling it a network error. By the time this broadcast ends, the advisory attached to this message will no longer be precautionary. Do not turn off your radio. I am looking at a phone on the desk in front of me right now. It is a personal handset belonging to one of the KQWL engineers, placed here about 20 minutes ago at his request. The message is still on the lock screen. It has been on the lock screen since 3:47 a.m. It has not dimmed. It is not timed out. The rest of the phone functions normally. That is one of the details I want to come back to. Officials are calling the event at present a coordinated push notification of undetermined origin. That is the exact phrasing from the 4 a.m. statement out of a regional emergency management office. I want to be careful with that wording, because in the last 90 minutes the desk has already seen it soften once. It began as advertising intrusion. It is now coordinated push notification of undetermined origin. That is the first time I have heard official language move in that direction on something like this. It is now 5:02 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 AM. For any listener joining us in the last few minutes, I will restate the core facts as verified. At approximately 3:47 this morning, local time, an identical text message was delivered to every mobile handset in Tillamook County that was powered on and within cellular range. The message is short. The message is not signed. The message contains an instruction. The desk is not going to read that instruction on this broadcast. I want to be precise about why. Multiple institutional sources have asked broadcasters in the coastal corridor to withhold the exact wording pending verification of what following the instruction actually does. I am passing that request along as received. I am honoring it. If that changes, I will tell you it has changed. What I can tell you is that the message is the same message on every phone. It is the same on prepaid handsets. It is the same on carrier lock handsets. It is the same on phones that were at 3:47 in airplane mode. That last detail is the one the desk has been trying to get a second confirmation on for the last 40 minutes. We now have that second confirmation. A caller from the Garibaldi Harbor District reports that his phone was powered on but with cellular data disabled and Wi-Fi off at the time of the event, and that the messages on his lock screen and identical wording to the message on his wife's phone, which was on a different carrier entirely. We cannot independently verify the airplane mode account, but the same account is repeating from 3 separate callers now, from 3 separate points along Highway 101. That removes the easy explanation. It is now 5:07 a.m. Pacific. KQWL's own internal handsets, the phones used by the overnight engineers, and by this desk, all receive the message. All of them, including the desk phone I am not using at the moment, which is sitting to my left with its screen face down, because looking at it is a small distraction I would rather not have right now. The desk received the message. The desk is treating that fact as data. At 4:18 a.m., a coastal coordination office issued its first bulletin. That bulletin used the word isolated. It described the event as an isolated cellular layer anomaly, likely regional, likely resolved within the operating day. I am reading you the operative words from that bulletin because at 4:51 a.m., the same office issued a second bulletin, and the word isolated was no longer in it. Authorities are not calling it isolated. They are calling it, in the newer wording, a broadly distributed cellular layer event, scope under active review. The word regional has been removed as well. Neither the desk nor, as of this update, any listener I have spoken should read those changes as an escalation of danger. They should read them as an escalation of scope. Those are different things. I want to be careful with that distinction. A caller from the north end of the county, near the county line, reports that a neighbor rose at approximately 4:30 this morning, dressed, took her car keys, and left the house without speaking. The caller states that the neighbor did not respond when addressed on the porch. The caller states that the neighbor's phone was in her hand. We cannot confirm this account. We are logging it. We are not, at this time, drawing a connection between individual behavior and the message content. I want to be very clear about that. We are logging it because the same account, in near identical shape, is repeating from 4 other callers in the last 20 minutes, from 4 unrelated addresses. That is the loop the desk is watching. I will come back to it. It is now 5:14 a.m. Pacific. I want to walk through what is verified about the message itself at the technical layer, because a listener asked, and I think the answer is grounding. A university communications lab on the northern coast, unnamed here at their request, has been examining copies of the message pulled from 3 separate handsets since 4 a.m. Their preliminary finding, relayed to the desk at 5:06, is that the message has no originating number, no carrier route header, and no timestamp in the metadata. The visible timestamp on the lock screen, 3:47 a.m., is not present in the underlying data. The lab describes a message as resident, not received. I am passing that phrasing along as given. I do not fully understand it. The lab has been careful to say that they do not fully understand it either. They have asked for more handsets. They are getting them. A regional transit dispatch reports that at approximately 4:10 a.m., roughly 23 minutes after the message, a coastal commuter route driver pulled his vehicle to the shoulder of Highway 101, south of Rockaway Beach, and did not resume the route. The bus was empty. Dispatch reports that the driver did not respond to radio contact for 11 minutes. He then resumed the route without explanation. His handset was later found on the dash. The message was on the screen. This account is verified through transit dispatch logs. I am relaying it as received. I am not attaching an interpretation to it. The desk is now receiving calls at a rate we have not seen on an overnight shift in over a year. People are calling to describe their phones. People are calling to describe their neighbors. People are calling in a smaller but increasing number to ask whether the desk has been able to read the message and understand what it is asking. I want to answer that last question directly. Yes, the desk has read the message. The desk has read it multiple times. The desk understands the words in the message. What the desk does not understand, and what no institutional source has yet been willing to confirm, is what the message is asking a person to do versus what the message is asking a person to become. Those may be the same thing. They may not. Officials are calling it right now a content-neutral delivery event. I want to note that phrasing. It is doing a great deal of work. It is now 5:21 a.m. Pacific. Along the coast, the fog this morning is unusually low, holding at the tree line down through Bay City. A caller from a kitchen window overlooking the harbor reports that the porch lights along her street have all come on, one by one, over the last hour, in houses where no one is awake. I am relaying that as received. We are waiting on the next coordination call. It is expected within the hour. Stay with us. This is KQWL 1620 AM, Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network. It is now 5:28 a.m. Pacific. For any listener joining in the last few minutes, I will restate the core facts as verified, and I will add one new detail that came in during the previous update. At 3:47 this morning, every powered mobile handset in this county received an identical and signed text message that is proven, so far, non-removable. The message is present even on handsets that were in airplane mode at the time of delivery. That has been confirmed through 5 independent callers, and as of 5:22, through the University Communications Lab I referenced earlier. The new detail is this. The lab reports that when a handset with a message is placed inside a shielded enclosure, a metal container of the kind used to block cellular and Wi-Fi signals entirely, the message remains on the screen and continues to display normally. That is the finding they are willing to stand behind at this time. They are not, at this time, willing to speculate about what that means. Neither is the desk. Authorities are not calling it a delivery mechanism anymore. They are calling it, in the 5:30 bulletin from a regional emergency management office, a persistent display condition of undetermined origin. Persistent is new. Display condition is new. Delivery has been dropped. That is the first time I have heard official language move away from the idea that the message arrived. It is now 5:34 a.m. Pacific. A verified report from a coastal hospital, relayed to the desk at 5:30, indicates that overnight staff have observed what they're describing as a small but noticeable increase in unattended patient events since approximately 4 a.m. An unattended patient event, in their internal language, refers to a patient who leaves a bed, a chair, or a waiting area without notifying staff and without an evident destination. The hospital reports 11 such events since 4 a.m. Their overnight baseline is 1 to 2. They report that in 9 of the 11 cases, the patient's personal handset was left behind, face up, with the screen active. They report that in 7 of those 9 cases, the screen was displaying the message. The hospital has asked that it not be named. I am honoring that. A caller from a residential street in Tillamook proper reports that at approximately 5:15 this morning, she watched her adult son, who lives with her, walk out the front door in his sleep clothes, cross the lawn, and stop at the edge of the road. She reports that he stood at the edge of the road for approximately 4 minutes, and then returned to the house without speaking. She reports that his phone was on the kitchen counter the entire time. The message was on the screen. She reports that when she asked him where he had gone, he told her he had not gone anywhere. She reports that he seemed to believe this. We cannot verify the internal account. The same shape of account is repeating from 6 other households now, from 6 unrelated addresses along the coastal corridor. The desk is now treating this as a pattern under observation, not as isolated caller color. That is a shift in how we are handling this material. I am telling you about the shift because I want you to know when the desk changes its own practice. It is now 5:41 a.m. Pacific. A regional utility office reports that residential electricity draw across the coastal grid rose sharply between 4:15 and 5:15 this morning, in a pattern the utility is describing as consistent with widespread simultaneous household activity in pre-dawn hours. The utility is careful to say that this is not, by itself, alarming. People wake up. People turn on lights. What the utility is flagging, and what they have asked the desk to relay, is that the geographic distribution of the draw is unusually even. There are no clusters. There are no gaps. The pattern is described, in their internal language, as flat across the service area. That phrasing came from the utility. Flat across the service area. When it refers to human beings waking up at the same time in the same way in every household, is not a phrasing I have heard the utility use before. A verified report from a coastal aviation office indicates that 2 small overnight flights out of a regional airfield were delayed this morning because pilots on the pre-flight checklist observed the message on their personal handsets and requested, per protocol, a brief operational pause. Both flights subsequently proceeded normally. What the office has asked the desk to relay is that during the pre-flight pause, the tower's own logging system briefly displayed a line of text on one of its internal monitors that did not originate from any known input. The tower reports that the text was, in the operator's description, in the shape of the message. The aviation office is not saying the message appeared on the tower system. They are saying that a line of text appeared that resembled it, and that the operator does not know where it came from. That distinction is theirs. I am honoring it. The desk is watching that loop. It is now 5:48 a.m. Pacific. The desk phone to my left is doing something I want to describe. The phone has been face down since the start of this shift. The screen is not visible, and yet, when I place my hand near it, the surface of the desk under is warm. Not hot, warm. The engineers have confirmed that this is consistent with a screen that is on and drawing power continuously. That is what a phone displaying a persistent message would feel like. I am telling you this because it is the small, domestic, verifiable version of what the university lab is trying to describe with more technical language. The message is on. The message stays on. Nothing turns it off. A caller from a household near Nettets Bay reports that her husband, who normally leaves for work at 6, has been standing in the kitchen since 5:30, holding his phone, not moving. She reports that he is not asleep. She reports that when she speaks to him, he answers, and that his answers are ordinary. She reports that he has not put the phone down. We cannot verify the internal detail. The same shape of account is now repeating from, by my count, at least 11 households. That is up from 6, 30 minutes ago. It is now 5:55 a.m. Pacific. A verified report from the county's own emergency management office indicates that the office, which had been logging incoming reports since approximately 4:30 this morning, has, in the last hour, moved from a report intake posture to a coordination-only posture. What that means, in the plain reading, is that the county office is no longer trying to catalog individual accounts. They are now relaying upward only what has been institutionally verified elsewhere. The county office has asked broadcasters in the corridor to continue their own intake. That is a small institutional shift. It is not a large one, but it is the first shift the desk has seen at the county level this morning. It is now 6:03 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network. The 6 a.m. bulletin from the Regional Coordination Office is expected within the next few minutes. Stay with us. It is now 6:09 a.m. The 6 a.m. bulletin has arrived. I want to read the shift in language directly. The bulletin no longer uses the phrase coordinated push notification. That language is out. The bulletin no longer uses the phrase display condition. That language is out. The new operative phrase is a persistent addressable event affecting mobile handset populations. Scope under active review. Containment posture advised. The phrase addressable event is a shift. It suggests, in the reading the desk is giving it, that the office is no longer describing what is on the phones as a message that was sent. They are describing it as something that is being maintained. That is the desk's reading. The office has not confirmed that reading, but that is the plain sense of the language, and I am obligated to relay it. The bulletin includes one restrictive advisory. Members of the public are asked, in the office's phrasing, to reduce direct visual engagement with affected handsets where feasible. That is the exact wording. The desk is honoring it. The engineer's phone remains face down on this desk. This is the first restrictive advisory the desk has been asked to relay in the course of this event. It is a small advisory. It is a soft advisory. But it is the first one, and I am marking it for you. It is now 6:14 a.m. Pacific. A verified report from a coastal rail dispatch indicates that a freight service scheduled to pass through the county at 5:50 this morning was delayed by approximately 18 minutes because the engineer, at a routine stop north of the county line, exited the cab and stood on the track ballast for the full duration of the delay. The engineer is reported to have returned the cab on his own and resumed the service without incident. Rail dispatch reports that the engineer's personal handset, recovered from the cab during the pause, was displaying the message. The engineer, on returning, is reported to have stated that he had come down to check a wheel. Rail dispatch reports that the wheel did not require checking, and that the engineer did not check it. The shape of the account is now consistent enough across sectors that I want to name what is consistent about it. In each case, a person appears to act on something they cannot afterward describe, and then return to ordinary function as if nothing had occurred. That is the shape. I am not naming it as more than that. It is now 6:22 a.m. Pacific. I want to hold on the local for a moment before we widen. The fog along Highway 101 has lifted slightly. The porch lights the earlier caller described are, per follow-up from her at 6:18, still on. All of them in houses where, to her knowledge, no one has stirred. A caller from a harbor at Garibaldi reports that at approximately 6 this morning, he walked the length of the dock and observed that the fishermen who ordinarily prepare their boats between 5 and 6 were, in his description, already in position, not moving. He reports that 7 boats were crewed. He reports that on each of the 7 boats, at least one crew member was standing on deck, holding a phone, facing east. We cannot verify the count. We can confirm, through a second caller from the same harbor, that the general account is repeating. The desk is watching that loop. It is now 6:29 a.m. Pacific. Sunrise is expected at 6:34. We will re-anchor at that point. There has still been no explanation of what the message is asking. There has still been no confirmation of where the message originated. The desk is continuing to relay only what is verified. That practice is not changing. It is now 6:36 a.m. Pacific. Sunrise has occurred. The porch lights along the coastal streets, per 3 separate callers, have not gone off. Porch lights are not, ordinarily, on timers keyed to sunrise. Many of them are on manual switches. What the callers are describing is that the porch lights that came on overnight, one by one, in houses where no one was awake, have not been turned off by anyone in the houses. The houses are, for the callers, quiet. We are moving into the 7 a.m. window. The desk expects an updated figure from the Regional Coordination Office within the hour. Stay with us. It is now 6:44 a.m. Pacific. A verified report from a coastal school district relayed to the desk at 6:40 indicates that overnight custodial staff at 3 separate elementary schools within the district observed, between 5 and 6 this morning, that the intercom systems in each building briefly displayed a line of text on the administrator's console. The district is careful to say that intercom consoles do not, in ordinary operation, display text of that kind. The district is careful to say that the text has since cleared from the consoles and that no record of it remains in the system logs. What the district has asked the desk to relay is that the custodial staff in each of the 3 buildings independently describe the text as in the shape of the message. That phrasing is now, by the desk's count, the 3rd time it has been used by an institutional source in the last 3 hours. Aviation, utility, now education. I am marking that convergence. I am not going to attach an interpretation to it yet. It is now 6:51 a.m. Pacific. A regional emergency management office has, in the last 4 minutes, released a supplemental bulletin. The bulletin does not name the phenomenon. The bulletin uses, for the first time in this event, the phrase surface independent. Surface independent, in the office's internal language, refers to a display condition that is not confined to a single class of device. The office is not, at this time, willing to list which devices are included in that description. What the office has confirmed is that the phenomenon is no longer being treated as confined to mobile handsets. That is a shift. The language has changed in the last few minutes. A caller from a farm at the eastern edge of the county reports that at approximately 6:30 this morning, the small display panel on his kitchen microwave, which ordinarily shows the time, briefly displayed a line of text he could not read fully because it cleared within, in his description, the space of a breath. He reports that the microwave has since displayed the time normally. He reports that no other appliance in the house has behaved unusually. We cannot verify the account. The same shape of account is repeating in the last 20 minutes from 4 other households, all inland, all east of Highway 101. The desk is aware that we are approaching a point in this event where a listener may reasonably ask what the message says. I am not going to read it. The coordination office is now, in the 6:51 bulletin, asked broadcasters explicitly not to reproduce the wording pending review. That is a formal request. The desk is honoring it. If that request is lifted, I will tell you it has been lifted. I want you to know the rule the desk is operating under. It is now 6:58 a.m. Pacific. I want to introduce, for the first time in this broadcast, a piece of information the desk has been holding since approximately 6:15 this morning while a second confirmation was obtained. The second confirmation is now in. A verified report from a coastal coordination desk indicates that the phenomenon is not confined to the county. The phenomenon is not confined to the state. As of 6:50, reports of an identical and signed message appearing on mobile handsets at 3:47 a.m. local time have been logged from every state along the western seaboard, from at least 14 states in the interior, and from the eastern seaboard as far south as the Gulf. That is a national footprint. That is what has been confirmed at the national tier. The coordination desk has been careful to say that this is a floor, not a ceiling. It is what is verified. It is not what is out there. It is now 7:04 a.m. Pacific. The desk has just received a supplemental confirmation from the same coordination desk. The phenomenon is not confined to the country. Reports of an identical and signed message appearing on mobile handsets at 3:47 a.m. local time, adjusted for the receiving time zone, are being logged from cities in at least 11 separate countries across 3 continents. That number is as of 6:58. The number is expected to rise. It does not mean the messages are the same wording in different languages, although that is also being verified. It means the messages arrived at 3:47, local, everywhere they arrived. The event was not sent to Tillamook County. The event was not sent to the West Coast. The event was not sent to this country. The event was, in the plain reading of the language now coming across the desk, sent to everyone with a phone. The pattern is converging. That is the phrasing the coordination desk used. I am passing it along as given. Stay with us. This is KQWL 1620 AM, Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network, Tillamook County Perimeter. It is now 7:12 a.m. Pacific. For any listener joining us in the last few minutes, I will restate the core facts as verified, and I will add one new detail. At 3:47 this morning, local time, an identical and signed text message was delivered to every powered mobile handset in this county. The message has since been confirmed to be present on handsets that were, at the time of delivery, in airplane mode, shielded, or offline. The message is now being reported, as of the last confirmation, on handsets in at least 14 countries across 3 continents. That number is up from 11 at 6:58. The new detail is this. A verified report from an overseas coordination service relayed to the desk at 7:08 indicates that in each confirmed country, the message arrived at 3:47 a.m. local time, not synchronized to a single moment, synchronized to a single clock reading. Everywhere it appeared. It means the phenomenon is not a broadcast. It means the phenomenon is key to the way we count hours. I am relaying that as received. I am not attaching an interpretation. Authorities are not calling it a message anymore. They are calling it, in the 7 a.m. bulletin from the Regional Coordination Office, a persistent addressable presence. That is the exact phrasing. Presence is new. Message has been dropped. That is the second time in this broadcast that the noun has moved. First delivery, then display, then event, now presence. That is the direction the language is going. I am not going to characterize that direction beyond describing it. It is now 7:19 a.m. Pacific. A verified report from a coastal transit dispatch indicates that the 7 a.m. commuter routes out of the county have, in the last 30 minutes, been operating at approximately 40% of ordinary ridership. Transit dispatch reports that the reduction is not the result of cancellations. The buses are running. The buses are, in the dispatcher's description, not being boarded. A caller from a park and ride lot on the eastern edge of town, calling in the last 12 minutes, reports that at least a dozen vehicles are parked in the lot with drivers inside them, engines off, not moving. He reports that he did not approach any of the vehicles. He reports that the vehicles were, in his description, waiting. We cannot verify the internal detail. The general account is now repeating from 2 additional callers at 2 additional park and ride locations along Highway 101. I want to acknowledge something the desk has been asked in the last hour by 3 separate callers. The question is whether the desk has itself received the message. I have already told you that the desk has. I want to add one thing I did not add earlier. The engineer's phone has been on this desk since the start of this shift, face down, is no longer the only phone on this desk. There are now 4 handsets on this desk. All 4 belong to KQWL overnight staff. All 4 are face down. All 4 are warm. The engineers moved them here at my request approximately 40 minutes ago because keeping them in the booths for the 6 a.m. advisory was described by 2 of them as, in their own words, hard to ignore. The advisory asked for reduced visual engagement. What the engineers are describing is that the phones, even face down, even out of sight, are hard to ignore. I do not know what that means. I am telling you because I said I would tell you when the desk's own practice changed. It is now 7:26 a.m. Pacific. A verified report from a coastal hospital, the same hospital referenced in the earlier update, indicates that between 6 and 7 this morning, the number of unattended patient events rose from 11 to 29. The hospital reports that in each case, the patients returned to their bed, their chair, or their waiting area within, on average, 11 minutes. The hospital reports that in each case, the patient is oriented, responsive, and reports no memory of having left. The hospital has asked the desk to relay one additional finding. In 4 of the 29 cases, the patient's personal handset had been secured in a locker at admission and was not in the patient's possession at the time of the event. The hospital reports that on retrieval of those 4 handsets, the message was on the screen. The hospital is not saying the patients were reached through their phones. The hospital is saying that the phones and the patients are behaving in a way that appears, in the hospital's phrasing, coordinated in the absence of contact. That phrasing came from the hospital. I am passing it along as given. The hospital has, in a supplemental at 7:22, asked the desk to relay one further observation. Between 6:45 and 7 this morning, the hospital's public address system, which is used to page staff to specific rooms, briefly emitted on 3 separate pages a sequence of tones that was not, in the hospital's internal language, a paging sequence. The hospital reports that the sequence did not carry a voice. The hospital reports that on review of the PA log, no page was entered by staff at those times. What the hospital has asked the desk to relay, and what the hospital is careful to say is a characterization from the overnight charge nurse and not from the hospital itself, is that the sequence was, in the charge nurse's phrasing, in the shape of the message. That phrasing is now, by the desk count, the fourth institutional convergence on that specific description. Aviation, utility, education, now medical. I am marking convergence. A caller from a residential street in Bay City reports that her elderly father, who has advanced hearing loss and does not, in her description, know how to use a smartphone, woke this morning at 6:30 and asked her, in ordinary conversation, whether she had also received the invitation. She reports that when she asked what invitation, he could not tell her. She reports that her father does not own a phone. We cannot verify the internal account. The same shape of account, involving a person who does not own or use a phone, is now repeating from 3 additional households in the last 20 minutes. That is a new category of caller report. The desk is watching that loop. It is now 7:34 a.m. Pacific. The 7:30 bulletin from the Regional Coordination Office is on the desk. The bulletin no longer uses a phrase affecting mobile handset populations. The bulletin uses a phrase affecting communication-capable populations. Communication-capable populations is not a phrase the desk has heard from the Coordination Office in any previous event of any kind. The phrase, in the plain reading the desk is giving it, appears to broaden the affected group from devices to the people who use them. I am not going to characterize that reading as confirmed. The Coordination Office has not confirmed it. The plain reading exists in the language in the last 30 minutes, has moved to permit it. The bulletin includes a second restrictive advisory. Members of the public are asked, in the office's phrasing, to avoid, where feasible, private one-to-one conversations with individuals who have recently exhibited unattributed movement. Unattributed movement, in the office's earlier internal language, appears to refer to the pattern the hospital and the transit dispatch have been describing all morning. A person acts and afterward cannot describe what they did. The advisory is asking the public to be careful in private one-to-one settings around people who have done this. The advisory is not a quarantine. The advisory does not use the word contagion. The advisory does, however, use the word conversation. That is a specific word. I am marking it. It is now 7:41 a.m. Pacific. I want to introduce, for the first time, a verified institutional finding that removes what has, until now, been an easy explanation. A university communications lab, the same lab referenced earlier, has released a preliminary review of what they're calling the resident text. The review, relayed to the desk at 7:36, states that when a handset displaying the message is fully powered off, the battery removed where physically possible, and the device left in that state for a period of not less than 15 minutes, and then repowered, the message is present on the lock screen at the moment the screen first illuminates. Not loading, not appearing, present. The lab is careful to say that this behavior is not consistent with any storage or retrieval mechanism they can identify in the device. The lab is careful to say that they are not, at this time, prepared to describe where the message is being stored, because they cannot locate it in the device. The lab is telling us that the message is on the phones, and that the message is not, in any sense they can measure, in the phones. That removes the easy explanation. It is now 7:47 a.m. Pacific. I want to relay a piece of information the desk has been reluctant to relay without a second confirmation. The second confirmation is now in. A verified report from a coastal community bank branch, forwarded to the desk through the County Emergency Management Office at 7:43, indicates that the branch's exterior automated teller machine at approximately 7:20 this morning briefly displayed on the customer-facing screen a line of text that was not part of the machine's ordinary display cycle. The branch reports that the text was visible for, in the branch manager's estimate, less than 4 seconds. The branch reports that the text cleared, and that the machine has since operated normally. What the branch manager has asked the desk to relay, and what the branch itself has been careful to attribute only to the manager, is that the text was, in her phrasing, in the shape of the message. That phrasing is now, by the desk count, the fifth institutional convergence on that specific description: aviation, utility, education, medical, now financial. I want to name the convergence. It is no longer in the plain reading, occurring on adjacent surfaces by coincidence. It is now occurring on surfaces that are not, in any ordinary sense, on the same network. It is now 7:53 a.m. Pacific. A caller from a school parking lot in the northern part of the county reports that a school bus arrived at approximately 7:30 this morning, unloaded normally, and that the children in his description did not go into the building. He reports that the children stood in the lot in a line, facing east, for approximately 4 minutes, and then entered the building. He reports that staff were present in the lot. He reports that staff did not appear to notice. We cannot verify the account. This is the first call or report of the morning involving children. The desk has not, until this update, logged any such report. I am marking that. I am not going further than that. A verified report from a coastal aviation office, following on the earlier report about the tower's internal monitor, indicates that at approximately 7:20 this morning, an in-flight display on a small passenger aircraft passing north over the coastal corridor briefly showed a line of text on the co-pilot's ancillary screen. The office reports that the text cleared within the space of a breath. The office reports that the co-pilot described the text as, in his phrasing, in the shape of the message. I want to name that the phrase "in the shape of" is now appearing across sectors that do not ordinarily share vocabulary. I am not attaching an interpretation. I am marking the convergence. It is now 7:59 a.m. Pacific. A verified report from a coastal utility office indicates that between 7 and 7:45 this morning, residential electricity draw in the county has held at a level the utility describes as flat and elevated. The utility reports that this pattern is now consistent with what has been observed across the entire coastal grid. The utility reports that a peer service at the 7:45 coordination call described the same pattern across their service area, and that the peer service is located on the eastern seaboard. The utility pattern the desk described at 5:41 this morning is no longer a coastal pattern. It is now, for the 7:45 call, a pattern being reported across service areas in multiple time zones. The utility is not offering an interpretation. Neither is the desk. The desk is expecting an 8 a.m. bulletin from a regional coordination office within the next 3 minutes. There has still been no explanation of what the message is asking a person to do. There has still been no confirmation of where the message originated. There has still been no successful removal of the message from any affected handset. Anywhere it has been reported, that is the state of the event. It is now 8:03 a.m. Pacific. The 8 a.m. bulletin has arrived. I want to read the shift in language directly because it is significant. The bulletin no longer describes the phenomenon as under active review. The bulletin describes a phenomenon as under containment and monitoring posture. Under active review is the language of an office that expects to explain something. Under containment and monitoring posture is the language of an office that expects to live with something. That is a different posture. That is the plain reading. The coordination office has not confirmed that reading. The language has moved. The bulletin also drops, for the first time, a word the office had used in every previous statement this morning. The word is harmless. I want to be precise. The office is not now calling the phenomenon harmful. The office is no longer calling it harmless. The word has been removed. That removal, in the desk experience, is a point at which official language stops offering reassurance and begins offering only description. I am marking that for you. It is now 8:07 a.m. Pacific. I want to relay something the desk has been asked to note on this broadcast, plainly and without characterization. In the last 20 minutes, a national wire service operating out of the eastern seaboard and carried by several peer broadcasters in the coastal corridor has released a bulletin describing the phenomenon as a coordinated network carrier exercise has been, in the wire service's phrasing, identified, contained, and scheduled for resolution by the operating day's close. The wire service attributes this framing to unnamed industry sources. The wire service does not name a coordinating agency. The wire service does not name a network carrier. The wire service describes a phenomenon in the past tense. The desk is not able to confirm that framing. The regional coordination office, in the 8 a.m. bulletin is describing the phenomenon as under containment and monitoring posture, which is not the same as identified, contained, and scheduled for resolution. The University Communications Lab at 736 described a message as present on handsets in a manner they cannot locate in the device, which is not consistent with network carrier exercise. The Overseas Coordination Service at 708 described the phenomenon as continental in footprint, which is not consistent with a single network carrier. The desk is not seeing any surface on any device on which the message has stopped. I am relaying the wire service's framing because it exists and because listeners in this corridor may hear it or a version of it from peer broadcasters in the next hour. I am relaying the desk's inability to confirm that framing because the desk has been asked in the 7:30 advisory to relay only what is verified, and the wire service's bulletin is not, at this hour, verified. If it becomes verified, I will tell you it has been verified. I do not, at this time, expect that to happen. It is now 8:14 a.m. Pacific. A caller from a household on a residential street near the harbor reports that at approximately 8 this morning, her husband, who had been standing in the kitchen holding his phone since 5:30, put the phone down on the counter and left the house. She reports that he did not take his car. She reports that he walked in the direction of the harbor. She reports that he did not respond when she called after him. She reports that he was, in her description, walking normally at his ordinary pace. She reports that she is on the porch as she is calling, and that she can still see him at the end of the street. We cannot verify the internal account. This is the first call report of the morning, describing sustained, directional movement away from a household. Every prior account has described a person returning. This one does not. The desk is not, at this time, characterizing the account as a change in the pattern. The desk is logging it as a first instance. I will come back to it. It is now 8:21 a.m. Pacific. I want to close this window with one additional piece of information the desk has been holding for a second confirmation. The second confirmation is now in. A verified report from a coastal coordination desk indicates that the earlier count of 14 affected countries has, in the last 40 minutes, moved to 31. The rate of confirmation is accelerating. The coordination desk reports that the number is expected to continue rising for as long as the process of confirmation itself can be sustained. For as long as the process of confirmation can be sustained is not neutral language. It suggests, in the plain reading, that the process may not be sustainable indefinitely. I am not going to characterize that as confirmed. The language exists and the coordination desk chose it. There has still been no explanation. There has still been no origin. The message is still on the phones. The engineers' phones are still face down on this desk. The desk is still relaying only what is verified. It is now 8:28 a.m. Pacific. We are approaching the point in this event where the desk expect the language to change again. Stay with us. This is KQWL 1620 AM, Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network, Tillamook County Perimeter. It is now 8:34 a.m. Pacific. The perimeter broadcast is continuing. I want to open this window with something the desk did not expect to have to relay, and I want to relay it plainly. In the last 4 minutes, the transmitter serving the station has begun logging an intermittent interruption on the outgoing carrier. The interruption is not audible to the desk. The interruption is being flagged on the engineer's monitoring board. The engineer, who is standing to my right at this moment and who has been standing there since approximately 7:50 this morning, describes the interruption as, in his phrasing, brief, patterned, and repeating. He is not describing static. He is not describing a signal loss. He is describing a shape on the outgoing carrier that does not, in his experience, occur on the outgoing carrier. He has asked the desk not to characterize the shape further until it has been observed for at least another 10 minutes. I am honoring that. I am telling you it is there. Authorities are not calling the transmitter interruption anything at this time because the desk has not yet reported it. The desk is reporting it now on this broadcast to the Regional Coordination Office and any peer station on the Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network that may be receiving us. If you are a peer operator hearing this update, the desk would like to know whether you are seeing the same shape on your outgoing carrier. That is the request. We are logging responses. It is now 8:41 a.m. Pacific. I want to return to the loop I opened at 8:14 this morning. The caller from the residential street near the harbor whose husband left the house on foot, walking in the direction of the harbor. The caller has phoned the desk back at 8:36. She reports that her husband did not return. She reports that she followed him at a distance from the porch to the end of the street, and from the end of the street to the intersection with the road that runs down toward the harbor, and that at the intersection she lost sight of him because, in her description, there were others. She reports that at the intersection there were, in her count, approximately 14 other adults walking in the same direction at the same pace from adjoining streets. She reports that none of them were speaking. She reports that none of them appeared to notice one another. She reports that she stopped at the intersection and did not follow further. We cannot verify the count. We have, in the last 20 minutes, received the same shape of account from 3 additional callers on 3 additional streets in the Harbor District. The desk is not, at this time, using the word convergence to describe what the callers are describing. The callers are using that word. The desk is not. A verified report from a coastal transit dispatch indicates that at approximately 8:15 this morning, the 7 a.m. commuter route that had been operating at reduced ridership was, in the dispatcher's phrasing, no longer being flagged by drivers on the route. The dispatcher reports that this is because the drivers are no longer flagging. The drivers are, in the dispatcher's description, completing their routes without incident and without report. The buses are running. The buses are, in the earlier account, largely empty. The drivers, who ordinarily radio in observations about the state of their route, are not radioing in observations. Transit dispatch has asked the desk to relay that this is not, in their internal language, silence. It is, in their phrasing, reduced report. I do not fully understand the distinction the dispatcher is drawing. I am telling you it exists. It is now 8:48 a.m. Pacific. The engineer has confirmed the pattern on the outgoing carrier. The interruption is occurring at intervals of approximately 43 seconds. The interruption is, in the engineer's measurement, approximately 1/3 of a second in duration. The interruption is not audible on the broadcast. The engineer has asked the desk to relay, and I am relaying as given, that when the interruption is examined on the monitoring board at a finer resolution, it takes a shape the engineer describes as, in his phrasing, in the shape of the message. The phrase that has, over the course of this morning, appeared at an aviation tower, at 3 elementary school intercom consoles, on a bank ATM screen, on a hospital PA log, at an in-flight ancillary display, and per 2 callers at a kitchen microwave, is now appearing on the outgoing carrier of the station broadcasting this update. The engineer is not saying the message is being broadcast. He is saying that the shape of the interruption resembles the shape of the message. The message is not audible. Nothing that is audible on this broadcast is being introduced by the interruption. That is the assurance the engineer has asked me to give you, and I am giving it to you as given. Authorities are not calling the phenomenon a message anymore. Authorities are not calling it a presence anymore. In the 8:40 bulletin from the Regional Coordination Office, which arrived on the desk approximately 3 minutes ago, the phenomenon is described as an active operational condition of undetermined origin, present at communication layers not previously included in advisories. Communication layers not previously included is a phrasing that, in the plain reading, appears to include this broadcast. I am not going to say that it does. The plain reading exists, and the coordination office wrote the sentence. It is now 8:55 a.m. Pacific. I want to introduce a piece of information the desk has been trying to verify for approximately the last 20 minutes, and which has, in the last 90 seconds, received a second confirmation. A verified report from a coastal coordination desk indicates that a peer relay station on the Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network, operating from a coastal perimeter approximately 200 miles south of the station, is no longer transmitting. The peer station's carrier went dark at approximately 8:41 this morning. The coordination desk has been unable to reach the peer station's overnight operator by any channel since 8:43. The peer station's carrier has not resumed. The desk is not, at this time, describing the peer station as offline in the sense of a hardware failure. The desk is describing the peer station as, in the coordination desk's phrasing, not currently in operation. That phrasing is deliberate. It leaves open what the operator is doing. I am not going to speculate about what the operator is doing. I am telling you the pier station is not on the air, and that the desk has been asked to note this on this broadcast so that any listener within range of that pier station's ordinary signal knows why they are not receiving it. A caller from a household in the Harbor District, calling in the last 4 minutes, reports that from her porch she can see, at the end of her street, a line of people standing at the water's edge. She reports that she is not going to describe further. She reports that she is calling because she does not know who else to call. I am relaying this as received. The desk has, in the last hour, received 3 calls of this general shape. These calls are asking the desk something the desk cannot answer. The desk is not able to tell you what to do. The desk is able to tell you what the coordination office is asking you to do. As of the 8:40 bulletin, the coordination office is asking members of the public within the coastal corridor to, in the office's phrasing, remain within their residences, maintain visual contact with household members where feasible, and reduce direct engagement with affected communication surfaces. Affected communication surfaces is a phrase that has replaced affected handsets in the 730 language. I am marking the shift. The desk is honoring the advisory. The engineers' phones are still face down. It is now 9:02 a.m. Pacific. A verified report from an overseas coordination service relayed to the desk at 8:59 indicates that the earlier count of 31 affected countries has, in the last 40 minutes, moved past what the service is now willing to number. The service has, in the phrasing they use, moved from country-level confirmation to continental posture. The service is no longer counting countries. The service is describing the phenomenon as continental. The service reports that this posture has been adopted at this hour on 5 continents. That is the number that was on the desk at 8:59. The plain reading is that the message is on every phone, that the message is being maintained rather than sent, that the message is now appearing in the shape of interruptions on communication infrastructure that is not ordinarily a phone, and that the process of confirming where it is not appearing has been abandoned as no longer meaningful. That is the plain reading. I am not going further than that. I want to note at this time that the desk is not, in the last 50 minutes, seen a follow-up bulletin from a national wire service that at 8:07 described the phenomenon as identified, contained, and scheduled for resolution. The wire service has not retracted the framing. The wire service has not restated the framing. The wire service, per 2 peer broadcasters the desk has been in contact with, has not, in the last 40 minutes, filed a bulletin on the phenomenon at all. I am relaying that absence because the earlier bulletin exists and because listeners may be waiting for a follow-up. There is not one at this hour. I do not know what that means. I am telling you. It is now 9:09 a.m. Pacific. The engineer has, in the last 2 minutes, asked the desk to note one additional observation on the outgoing carrier. He reports that the interruption interval, which had been holding at approximately 43 seconds, is now holding at approximately 41. He reports that the interval has, in his measurement, been shortening by an average of 1/10 of a second per iteration over the last 12 minutes. He is not, at this time, characterizing what will happen when the interval reaches 0. He is not saying it will reach 0. He is saying it is moving in that direction. A verified report from a coastal hospital, the same hospital referenced earlier, indicates that the unattended patient events that had, at 7 a.m., been resolving within an average of 11 minutes are, as of 8:45, no longer reliably resolving. The hospital reports that 14 patients who left beds, chairs, or waiting areas between 7 and 8:30 this morning have not returned to those beds, chairs, or waiting areas. The hospital reports that the patients have not left the building. The hospital reports that the patients are, in the phrasing of overnight staff, on the grounds, standing, facing east. The hospital has asked the desk to relay that this is not, at this time, being characterized as a change in patient status. It is being characterized, in the hospital's language, as a change in patient posture. Posture is not, ordinarily, a clinical word in the way the hospital is using it. The desk is watching that loop. It is now 9:17 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network. The 9 a.m. bulletin from the Regional Coordination Office has been delayed by approximately 15 minutes. It is now on the desk. This is the largest shift the desk has read this morning. The bulletin no longer describes a phenomenon as an active operational condition. The bulletin describes a phenomenon as a stable operating environment. Active operational condition is the language of an office that expects the environment to change. Stable operating environment is the language of an office that has stopped expecting the environment to change. That is the plain reading. The coordination office has not confirmed it. The language has moved. The bulletin includes what the office is calling its operating posture for the day. I am going to read the operative language as given. Members of the public are asked, in the office's phrasing, to operate under the assumption that mobile handset function may be unreliable, that adjacent communication surfaces may exhibit intermittent unattributed display, and that individuals within the household may exhibit brief unattributed movement without an evident destination. Members of the public are asked to conduct essential activity within the residence where feasible and to defer non-essential travel until further guidance is issued. The office does not, in this bulletin, use the word resolved. The office does not, in this bulletin, use the word temporary. The office does not, in this bulletin, use the word explained. Those absences are, in the desk's practice, the words to watch. I am marking them for you. It is now 9:24 a.m. Pacific. A caller from a household near Nettitz Bay reports that at approximately 9:15 this morning, her husband, who had been standing in the kitchen since 5:30, and whom she had described in an earlier call as answering ordinarily when addressed, no longer answers when addressed. She reports that he is not distressed. She reports that he is not asleep. She reports that he is, in her description, here and not here. I am relaying this as received. The desk has, in the last 30 minutes, logged for additional calls of this general shape. The desk is not characterizing what the callers are describing. The desk is logging it. The desk has been logging it since approximately 5 this morning, and the shape of what is being logged has, over 4 hours, moved in one direction. The direction exists. I am not going further than that. It is now 9:31 a.m. Pacific. I want to give one final piece of language from the coordination office, which arrived on the desk in a supplemental bulletin at 9:28. The office describes a phenomenon in the operative sentence of the supplemental as stable at full expression, no correction posture available, monitoring only. Stable at full expression is the office's way of saying that the phenomenon is not going to reduce. No correction posture available is the office's way of saying that no one at the office knows how to make it stop. Monitoring only is the office's way of saying that the office is no longer trying. That is what the language has moved to. The message is still on the phones. The message has not been read on this broadcast. The desk is honoring the request not to read it. And I want to say plainly that at this hour the desk is not going to test a request. The desk is not going to speculate about what testing it would do. The advisory stands. I am relaying it as given. It is now 9:38 a.m. Pacific. The engineer has asked me to note that the interval on the outgoing carrier interruption is now holding at approximately 39 seconds. He is no longer characterizing it as shortening. He is characterizing it as, in his phrasing settled, the shape on the outgoing carrier is not going away. The shape on the outgoing carrier is now part of the outgoing carrier. That is what settled means when an engineer uses it about a signal. I am passing that along as given. It is now 9:44 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m., Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network. For any listener joining us in the last few minutes, I will state the operating posture as the desk understands it this hour. At 3:47 this morning, local time, an identical and signed message arrived on every powered mobile handset in this county, and over the course of the morning, on handsets across at least 5 continents. The message has proven non-removable. The message is now appearing in the shape of it on communication surfaces that are not phones. The phenomenon is not being characterized by the coordination office as harmful. The phenomenon is not being characterized by the coordination office as harmless. The word harmless was dropped at 8 a.m. and has not returned. Members of the public are asked to remain within their residences, to maintain visual contact with household members where feasible, and to defer non-essential travel until further guidance is issued. Further guidance is not expected. The 928 supplemental described the phenomenon as stable at full expression. No correction posture available, monitoring only. That is where the language has come to rest. It is now 9:51 a.m. Pacific. The engineer's phones are still on this desk. The engineer's phones are still face down. The engineer has, in the last 20 minutes, asked whether he might turn one of them over. I told him he could. He did not. I want to be honest with you about what he said when he did not. He said, in his phrasing, not yet. I did not ask what he was waiting for. The desk at this hour is not asking questions that we do not have to ask. That is a practice we have arrived at over the course of this morning. It is what has happened. I am telling you because I said I would tell you when the desk's practice changed along Highway 101. For 2 callers in the last 10 minutes, the fog has burned off entirely. It is a clear morning. The porch lights along the coastal streets are still on. The houses are still quiet. The line of people at the end of the Harbor Caller Street is, per most recent call at 9:42, still at the water's edge. She reports that she has not gone down to the water. She reports that she is not going to. She reports that she is going to hang up now and sit in her kitchen and wait for her husband. She reports that she does not know what she is waiting for. I am relaying that as received. It is now 9:58 a.m. Pacific. There has still been no explanation. There has still been no origin. There has still been no successful removal of the message from any affected handset, anywhere it has been reported. There has still been no return of the Pier Station's carrier 200 miles south. The interruption on the station's outgoing carrier is settled at 39 seconds. The coordination office is in monitoring posture only. The public is asked to remain within their residences. The desk does not know what the message is asking. The desk does not know what the message does. The desk does not know why the message arrived at 3:47 a.m. Local, everywhere arrived. The desk does not know why the shape of it is appearing on carriers, on consoles, on kitchen displays, on the exterior telemachine at a coastal bank, and now, on this station's own signal. The desk is not going to speculate. The desk is going to continue relaying only what is verified, for as long as the process of relaying can be sustained. That last phrasing is not the desk's phrasing. That last phrasing is the coordination desk's phrasing from 6:58 this morning. I am borrowing it. The perimeter broadcast is continuing understanding advisory. The advisory is not precautionary. The advisory is operative. Remain within your residence. Maintain visual contact with household members where feasible. Defer non-essential travel. Reduce direct engagement with affected communication surfaces. Do not, at this time, read the message aloud in the presence of another person. That final line is new. That final line arrived on the desk in a bracketed addendum at 9:54 this morning. I am relaying it as given. I am not going to characterize why the addendum was added. I am telling you it was added and that the desk is honoring it. It is now 10:04 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network. The desk has, in the last 3 minutes, received a coordination desk. Notice the desk did not expect to receive in this form. The Regional Coordination Office has issued what the coordination desk is describing as a final operating notice for the day. The operative language reads, in the office's phrasing, further bulletins are not planned. The 928 supplemental describes the operating environment to the close of the day. Broadcasters are asked to relay standing advisory language on their own cadence. I want to be careful with what that means. The coordination office is not going offline. The coordination office is not stepping back from a phenomenon. The coordination office is saying that it does not, at this hour, have anything more to say. Bulletins will not be issued because bulletins would not contain new material. That is the plain reading. The office is not, in the plain reading, expecting new material. It is now 10:09 a.m. Pacific. The engineer has asked me to note one further observation on the outgoing carrier. The interval, which is settled at 39 seconds, is no longer at 39 seconds. The engineer reports that in the last 4 minutes, the interval has moved to 37, and then to 34, and then to 30. He is no longer describing the shape as settled. He is describing the shape as, in his phrasing, closing. The engineer has been careful to say that he does not know what closing will look like. He is saying that the shape is now occurring more frequently than it was, and that the interval between occurrences is measurably shorter than it was 15 minutes ago. The interruption is still at this hour, not audible on the broadcast. Nothing that is audible on this broadcast is being introduced by the interruption. The engineer has asked me to repeat that assurance. I am repeating it as given. The harbor caller from the residential street near the water has not called back. Her last call was at 9:42. The desk has, in the last 20 minutes, tried to reach her twice at the number she called in on. The line rings. The line is not answered. The desk is not characterizing that. The desk is noting it. It is now 10:16 a.m. Pacific. A verified report from a coastal hospital, the same hospital referenced through this broadcast, indicates that the 14 patients described at 9:09 as standing on the grounds, facing east, are now, as of 9:55, no longer the entire count. The hospital reports that between 9:55 and 10:08, 23 additional patients have left beds, chairs, or waiting areas, have exited the building, and have taken up positions on the grounds. The hospital reports that the patients are not clustered. The hospital reports that the patients are spaced, in the phrasing of overnight staff, at intervals. The hospital has asked the desk to relay that at this hour, the hospital's operating posture has moved from monitoring patient movement to monitoring patient position. That is a shift in what the hospital is doing. That is what the hospital has asked the desk to say. It is now 10:21 a.m. Pacific. The engineer reports that the interval on the outgoing carrier is now at 22 seconds. The engineer reports that it is continuing to shorten. The engineer has, at this update, moved from his monitoring board to the desk. He is standing beside me. He has asked me to relay, on his behalf, that the transmitter is functioning normally at every layer he is able to measure, that there is no hardware fault, and that if the interval reaches a point at which the shape on the outgoing carrier is no longer intermittent, he does not, at this time, know what the transmitter will be transmitting. He has asked me to say plainly that he does not know. I am relaying that as given. I want to name, plainly, what has happened to the sources this broadcast has been relying on all morning. The coordination office has stopped issuing bulletins. The wire service that at 8:07 described the phenomenon as identified and contained has not filed a follow-up. The University Communications Lab has not, in the last 90 minutes, released an additional finding. The hospital is no longer describing its posture as monitoring patient status. It is describing its posture as monitoring patient position. The pier station 200 miles south is not on the air. The harbor caller is not answering. The desk is, at this hour, one of the surfaces that is still transmitting. The desk is aware of that. It is now 10:27 a.m. Pacific. The engineer reports that the interval on the outgoing carrier is now at 11 seconds. He reports that the shape has, in his measurement, thickened. He is careful with the word thickened. He is using it to describe that the duration of each occurrence, which had held at approximately 1/3 of a second through most of the morning, is now approximately 1 full second. The occurrences are longer. The gaps between them are shorter. The interruption is still not audible on the broadcast. The engineer is standing at the desk. He has not turned over the phone he asked about at 9:51. The phone is still face down. It is still warm. The other 3 phones on the desk are still face down. They are still warm. A caller from a residential street in Tillamook proper. The same caller who at 5:15 this morning described her son crossing the lawn and stopping at the edge of the road, reports that at approximately 10:20 this morning her son left the house again. She reports that this time he did not stop at the edge of the road. She reports that she is calling from her porch. She reports that she can no longer see him. I am relaying this as received. The desk has, in the last 15 minutes, received 4 additional calls of his general shape from the same residential corridor. The desk is not characterizing what the callers are describing. The desk is logging it. It is now 10:32 a.m. Pacific. The engineer reports that the interval on the outgoing carrier is now at 4 seconds. He reports that the shape is, in his phrasing, no longer intermittent in any meaningful sense. He reports that the transmitter is still functioning. He reports that the broadcast is still audible. He reports that what the transmitter is transmitting at the layer he is able to measure, is now the shape more often than it is not the shape. He has asked me to say plainly that the audible broadcast, this voice on this desk, on this frequency, is still the audible broadcast, and that the shape is not at this hour in the audible layer. He has asked me to say plainly that he does not know how long that will hold. I am relaying that as given. I want to say plainly that the desk is going to continue reading standing advisory language on the cadence the coordination office asked for at 10:04. Remain within your residence. Maintain visual contact with household members where feasible. Defer non-essential travel. Reduce direct engagement with affected communication surfaces. Do not, at this time, read the message aloud in the presence of another person. That is a standing advisory. That is what the desk has been asked to relay. That is what the desk is relaying. It is now 10:36 a.m. Pacific. The engineer has stepped away from the desk. He has, in the last 30 seconds, turned over the phone he asked about at 9:51. He has not said why. He has not asked me to characterize the turning over. He has returned to his monitoring board. The phone, face up, is now on the desk to my left. The message is on the screen. I am not going to read it. The porch lights along the coastal streets are still on. The line of people at the water's edge, for the last caller who was able to see it, has not moved. The fog has not returned. The morning is clear. There is no further guidance expected. There is no correction posture available. The environment is stable at full expression. The interval on the outgoing carrier is under 4 seconds. The message is on the phones. The message is on the desk. The desk is still transmitting. Remain within the perimeter. This is KQWL 1620 AM, Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network. The perimeter broadcast is continuing.